morning. "Is it on?" John asked hastily. "Yes, yes, just hurry up," said Nick nervously. John looked at the world map that he placed behind him on the wall. The map was dimly lit by a candle that stood on a small table in the middle of the room. The house was old, derelict, and was about to collapse under its own weight. The wind howled through the cracks of the decayed house. The flame of the candle was causing ominous shadows dancing on the walls. Nick stood behind the table and filmed John while he was figuring out the map. The map was creased and dirty. There were small black and big red circles drawn over certain places. Above the black circles were numbers from 1 to 4. The red circles were drawn with arrows pointing in different directions. Suddenly Nick lowered the camera and looked with an anxious glance over his shoulder at the broken door that hung just in one hinge. "Please hold the camera steady," said John. Nick slowly turned his head back at John. His sweaty, muddy face glistened in the candlelight. "I thought I heard something," he said anxiously. Nick's clothes were torn, and under his left eye he had a cut that was slightly bleeding. Thick stakes and branches stoked through the windows and the cracks in the walls. The furniture and the floor were covered with a layer of moss, and there was a musty old air you would rather not breathe. In the middle of the floor was a large crack that extended up the inner wall and ended in a hole in the ceiling. A leg of a king-size bed dangled out through the hole, and wavered as the wind blew against the house. John looked straight into the camera and rubbed the sweat off his forehead with his sleeve. "We have to go as soon as possible, so I'll keep the message short." John nodded at Nick, and Nick zoomed in at John and the map behind him. "Today is April 3rd, and the time is 3:05 plus 1 GMT. So we've traveled 2 days through Stuttgart without finding the source." John pointed out at the south of Germany on the world map, where a big red circle was drawn. "It's not right. The law of nature is changed." John hesitated at this statement. "When you receive this tape, we are en route to Australia." He pointed at a black circle with the number 2 written above it. "Always try to avoid the red zones as much as possible." John pointed at the 4 largest red circles on the map. "The people who are still alive there," he hesitated for a moment, "they have changed." Suddenly Nick lowered the camera, turned around and looked at the door. Then the floor trembled and the walls began to crack. Completely frozen, they stared at the doorway. Nick held his breath as the bed slid further into the hole, balancing on the edge. Dust fell from the ceiling and the candle's flame almost extinguished. Nick turned around and looked at John with anxious eyes. "It found us! Go! We've gotta go!" Nick's voice trembled in fear. John raised his hand at Nick and focused on the sounds. Then he shook his head. "Not yet, Nick. We have to warn the others by finishing this tape." Nick looked helplessly. But... John walked calmly towards Nick and put a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Without you, I cannot do this, Nick. I need you." Nick nodded slowly and held the camera once again straight, but had trouble keeping it steady. The image was blurred by the fallen dust on the lens. John continued his message. "When you get this message, it's about a week later, and you must book a flight to North America as soon as possible." He looked at the map. "Yes, here." He pointed at the northwest of America on the map. "Seattle." We'll meet you there. Suddenly, a high-pitching scream interrupted John. The house began to shake violently. Dust, moss, and pieces of rotten wood fell down, causing the candle flame to extinguish. Nick froze. John ripped the map of the wall and took Nick by his arm. "Come on, Nick, we must go now." John dragged Nick along with him. Suddenly there was a tremendous crash, followed by a hard bang. Nick dropped the camera in fear. The king-size bed was falling through the ceiling and cracked the rotten floor wide open. The lens of the camera was cracked, but kept on filming as Nick and John escaped the house through the back door.